Hello, and welcome to another episode of Get Your Fill Financial Independence and Long Life, where we explore ways to achieve those two goals. And we invite people on to help us who are going to blow your mind with cool, interesting information. And that's why I'm psyched that Jerome Myers is with us today. Jerome, first of all, before you even hear, you got to take my word for it and go and share this episode with a friend because Jerome is going to he's going to intoxicate your mind with all kinds of cool ideas. Jerome, thanks so much for being with us today.
Chris, I'm so grateful that you allowed me to come on and share with your audience. I really hope that I deliver on your promise. I usually try to be in the top three most popular episodes that a person has. So let me do everything I can to deliver tremendous value to your audience today.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And I know they appreciate that. So, Jerome, were you always like the incredible, successful, and helping other people with successful person that I see before me today?
Was I always that person? I'd like to say yes. I struggle and I'm beginning to stutter and stammer here because nobody's ever said that to me. But there's a very long track record of being very interested in seeing other people be successful. And I will go back to a childhood story if you'll allow me.
Of
I
course.
had a friend, he lived two houses down. His name was BJ. He was older and he had an airplane and it broke. And I was like, "Oh, mom, the airplane broke. Like, we got to get another one." So, cuz he was like really sad, he was crying. And so I figured out how to get the kid an airplane. And when he got the airplane, like his life changed again. Everything was amazing and I in some contorted way thought he wouldn't be my friend if we couldn't figure out how to get the problem solved. That was kind of an unhealthy way of being interested and engaged in people making their dreams a reality. Today, I figured out how to create the boundaries around that and actually know that, it's not me just buying a friend or getting a person to be engaged with me, but being able to align myself with them to help them overcome their roadblocks and then grow and become the person they need to be in order to have what they want to have. And I mean, there's a matriculation through that. Was I working with people at the same caliber or income level that I do today? No, I wasn't. But I was always interested and driven by the thought that, like, if you want something, you can have it. And that's kind of propelled me through life.
And that's a fantastic attitude and state of mind. And of course, we know now that it's true, right?
I found it to be true, but Chris, when I come on these shows, I find that a lot of people don't actually believe that to be true. In fact, the listeners are just kind of say, "Oh yeah, that's great for them," but I don't know if it's true for me or possible for me. And one of the things I really love to do is to challenge them and say, "Hey, if nobody's told you lately that your dreams should be real, that's what I'm here for. I'm here to tell you that." And now that you've heard that and we've got to that very early in the episode, you are now convicted. You have to go do something about that because once you know better, you have to do better.
Absolutely. And, I think one of the reasons people don't want to believe that they have that power is because then they have to take responsibility for what they have today when their dreams have not been very exciting.
Well, it's funny. I think a lot of people say they don't have dreams. They go down this path of, oh, well, I just need to be practical. I need to be reasonable. And those things are the fastest way to mediocrity. And so if you want to live an extraordinary life, and I don't care who you are, I made a post about this on LinkedIn the other day. I did not have a picture of a beater on my wall when I was 8. I had a Lamborghini, right? I didn't go to the book fair looking for a 30-year-old Toyota Corolla as a car that I wanted to have in my garage. I had Ferraris. I've got a model Lamborghini sitting on my desk right now. Like I've loved cars since I was a kid, and I don't think that's ever going to go away. And I think a lot of us as adults, we get in this mode of, oh, well, I don't have to do that. I don't need to aspire to living the life that I dreamed of as a kid. I can just be content and live less than. And I struggle with that because I don't think that's what we're here for. I think we're here to thrive. And I think so many people are just surviving. They're trying to get through. they're going down the path of the American dream, trying to make it to, what is it, 65 now, to retire and then get their social security. And it's not what it's about for me. And I refuse. I jumped off that ladder. I dropped out of corporate America. I refuse to believe that, we work for 40 years so that we can hopefully live 15 in retirement. There's nothing about that that's exciting for me.
No, that's for sure. Contentment should be like a bad word. People say, "Oh, I'm content." And he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry for you. Oh my God, how can we help you?" Right?
There's so much more to be had. There's so much more. There's so much possibility. And as we get older, as we get more obligations or responsibilities, we go down this path of killing our dreams. And I want to reignite that spark. I want to inspire people to go back down that path and or go into that closet and get that dream off the top shelf and open it up after you dust off the box and see what it is and look at it and believe that it's possible for you, and then find the right people to help you go from where you are to where you want to go, because the only reason you don't have it is because you haven't become that person, and maybe you haven't become that person because you don't know how. But there's a ton of people who can help you get that done, and that's why I do what I do, and I think a lot of other people in the space do what they do.
Yeah. So, Jerome, what did you have like a, I mean, did you just evolve into this person, or did you have some kind of a pivotal kind of aha moment? Like, I was working this crap job and then all of a sudden I realized, or I mean, well, like, tell me your history.
Yeah, so it's funny you bring this up. I had about three or four different what I call red pill moments. I'm a huge fan of the Matrix, and the red pill for me in this particular instance was flying into Greens or Richmond, Virginia from Salt Lake City on a Friday night in the fall about 9 p.m. And the flight path crosses over a high school football field on the way into the airport. And the lights are on. There's a kid that just broke through the line and they're running for an 80-yard touchdown. The crowd is going crazy. You can see the tubas in the band swinging from side to side as people are playing and beginning to celebrate what's happening. And I'm in the airplane sitting next to some stranger looking out the window with tears streaming down my face. See, I played football through college, and then I was a defensive coordinator at the high school level for about 7 years. And the year prior to this flight, I decided that I was going to be my last year coaching. I took another promotion. I was making about extra $600 a month after taxes for that new role. And what it did was eliminate my ability to be at practice and to be able to call plays on Friday nights because I needed to travel around the globe. And my heart broke because inside that fence, when everything else in my world was going wrong, that always went right. I was working with a group of people who I thought was in the scariest part of their lives. Now, bear with me. You're not worried about being homeless. You're probably only worried about is if the girl likes you or if your parents are going to catch you because you snuck out and did something you weren't supposed to do, or maybe getting a speeding ticket. But in that frame, in that existence, in that understanding, it is absolutely terrifying because you got just enough freedom to get in trouble and get in some real trouble, but you don't have all of the risk. But for them, they think they can lose everything. And I was there to guide them because they couldn't go to their parents. And if they went to their friends, they didn't know any more than they knew. So coach was the guy that could give them independent counsel and wisdom. And, I was working my day job as an engineer and a project manager prior to that. And so I would come in the evenings and coach football, and that was like, oh man, that was the epitome of life. But I gave that up for, like I said, about $700 a month after taxes. And so I realized I had to do something different because I left all the fulfillment in pursuit of the money. And I didn't get back into coaching. The role continued. I eventually ended up being overseas for a while. And then I got recruited out of that organization into another company. I was employee number 2, Chris, and that was
Oh,
January 13th. And in that division, we went from 2 to 175 over the course of about 9 months.
wow.
And I had P&L responsibilities. And by the end of the year, we did about $20 million in revenue, had a 30% profit margin. And people were looking around like, how did they do that? And I remember getting a call. This is a second red pill moment. It was 4:55 on December 24th. And it went something like this. Hey, Jerome, we've been going back and forth about this for a couple of weeks. And I made a decision. We're going to lay about half of them off, and you can be involved in that if you want, or we can have somebody else do it. Totally up to you, but that's the decision. And I go in and I start advocating because, that's what I do. Hey, no, we can't do that. We need these people to be around, right? If we lay them off, then when we expand, it's going to be a problem. We're going to have to go back and rehire them. Jerome, it's not what I called you for. I called to communicate a decision that was made. This is not a negotiation. I was like, no, no, you don't get it. Like, you're not considering all the points. I'm here on the ground. You're a few hours away, and you talk to me every other week, and we see each other once a quarter. And then he said, Jerome, it's 4:59 on Christmas Eve. I'm going to go spend the rest of the year with my family. I'll talk to you in the new year. And I said, no, no, you don't get it. And he didn't say anything. And then I looked down at my phone and there was these 3 beeps. And if you have an iPhone, you know what I'm talking about. It's this boop, boop, boop. And I was like, oh, I guess he hung up on me because the call didn't magically drop. And so then my stomach dropped, right? Because it was like, I'm the axeman. I'm the person who has to tell people they don't have a job anymore. And I don't even know who to tell because I've never done this before. So I went through all the things that I could figure out how to do in my engineering and business mind to make this process as objective as possible. I didn't want anybody to argue about why they weren't there and somebody else was. And when we got to the end of it, we had some pretty good metrics on who was the top performers, and then we added some of the subjective stuff in, but we did execute that. And I pointed my finger and I said, "Hey, they made me." Right? It wasn't me, it was them, and I they made me do it. And it was at that point that I realized, like, I didn't have as much control as I thought I did. And so, we put Humpty Dumpty back together again, we go on another run, and this time, it was 2 days before Thanksgiving, and I'm standing up in front of the room, and I said, "Hey, I don't know what's gonna happen. Please don't spend all of your paycheck on Black Friday." And sure enough, in a week or so after that, maybe 2 weeks after that, we're having a similar conversation. And it was at that point I solidified my decision to drop out of corporate America. Because the first time I did it, I didn't realize I had agency, right? I didn't realize that I could say, hey, I'm not going to participate in the process of laying folks off. The second time I knew that it was on me, I had a choice. And if I didn't exercise my choice, then I was just a cog in the machine and I didn't want to be that. So I left corporate and started on this journey of trying to figure out how to get my impact back because right, I left it for money and then I was in a position where I was telling people they had to go find another way to feed their family. And I really wanted to get back to what I thought was significance. And so to put a bow on this, we created a model. We call it the model for a centered life, aka the red pill. And it's got 6 layers. It starts with self-image. The second layer is relationships. The fourth layer is work. So those 3 areas or 3 parts of the red pill is where all your stress comes from. And I've done this a lot. I've had this conversation a lot, and I'm still waiting for somebody to prove to me that they get stressed outside of one of those 3 categories. So then we move up to the next layer, which is the next layer is health, right? And so we reduce the stress so that you can focus on your health. And people are like, what are you talking about? Well, most people who are stressed need to do something at the end of the day to take the edge off. And you can pick whatever that is, but for the vast majority of people, it is not healthy, right? So they're doing something that is self destructive And so we want to get the stress down to a level where you don't feel like you have to numb life. After health comes prosperity, and after prosperity comes significance. And so for me, helping people move through the first 5 layers is my significance play, right? So the first 5 layers, I will call that self-transcendent, or I'm sorry, self-actualization,
Mhm.
right? You want to fully self-actualize. And for anybody who looked at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, just going back to that. And then level 6 is transcendence. What I learned is that everybody, once they're successful, they realize, hey, time and money are just tools. And so I've got to do something in order to impact other people. The vast majority of the apex performers that I spend time with, they want to be immortal, right? They might not want to live forever, but they want to have an impact that lives
Legacy.
past when they pass away. And so they're looking for that legacy play. And so for me, it was really cool. I jumped on a meetup one night, and one of the guys that works with me inspired a lady to do something, and I had done nothing to talk to her to encourage her to do the thing, but then it all came full circle as she was reflecting, because she was actually a presenter at that meetup. So at the end of the day, you never know where the ripple effect will happen when you drop that rock into the pond. And I think that's what most people are looking to do. Sometimes we do it out of order, though, Chris. Sometimes we'll try to go make the significance play, but we didn't put our mask on first. And when you don't put your mask on first, you end up in a place where you have to depend on other people to take care of you.
Yeah. So I want to just go back real quick when you were saying that you just, you decided to leave corporate America. I know a lot of our listeners want to make that same play. You made it sound kind of like, oh, and then I just opened the door and walked out. But I mean, what was in that for you? What was involved in that for you?
Yeah, I didn't do it the right way. I'll tell you that. I burned the ships. And
Kids, don't
it
try this at
wasn't.
home. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how many bumps and bruises you want. The great thing is we created a checklist that helps people create their matrix escape plan, is what I call it. And I think some of the most important things for people who are listening here to realize is, one, you need money, right? If you're going to cut off your stream of income, you better have a dam up there that you can draw from, and so you still have something to drink from as you go through and build whatever your thing is. We don't encourage people to actually leave before they actually prove to themselves they can make income another way. And if you aren't a sales professional, you probably should learn how to sell before you exit, because if you don't have any sales, you don't have a business. I think the next thing is making sure that you have a deliberate conversation with the folks who are going to be most impacted by you exiting corporate America. Why, Jerome? Well, you at some point are going to create some stress. Doesn't matter how good your plan is, there's going to be some friction around that. You just want to make sure that you have the buy-in of the people that you care for most, and hopefully you're spending time with the people you care for most, because if you're not, then it's kind of backwards. And then I think the other thing that's probably worth mentioning here, Chris, that is on the checklist, but I'm not going to go through all 15, is making sure that you have bought everything that you plan to buy on credit before you exit. The lenders are not very nice once you leave corporate America, because they want that good W-2, and they can prove that you have the income that you have, and they want your tax returns to be nice. And all that's pretty predictable when you have a job. When you're out in the space and you're freelancing, or you have some type of entrepreneurial endeavor going on, you end up in a space where people are uncomfortable lending to you because you don't have a proven income stream.
Yeah.
And so, those three things are really tactical, right? It's the math piece of it. And
Mhm.
then there's a ton of emotional stuff that goes on the backside as well. But, for those folks who are trying to figure out if this is even possible for them, that's what they have to do, because they have to solve that math problem. And the other thing I'll say is, if you're spending all the money that you make, then you're probably not ready to leave, right? If you don't have money in savings, if you don't have a gap between your earnings and your expenses, you're going to be really, really hard pressed to make that exit, because you just don't have any breathing room.
Well, that's a way people trap themselves into the jobs they hate too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean doing things, and it was amazing when I left. I went on this rant. I would say, "Hey, I don't do things for money anymore," and I resented my ability to earn, mainly because I was in a pretty toxic relationship, and I felt like in the end I was just a wallet, and so I was like, I want to get as far away from that as possible, but in hindsight, I realized like that was not the right answer. And yeah, you can try to be all noble and all this stuff, but that's not the game either. You gotta have some income because income is a good way of determining whether or not you're having an impact.
Yeah, definitely. So did you start right away? You left corporate America and you got into consulting?
So I thought I did, right? And it's funny. we're gonna give the whole thing, right? So I thought that my consulting practice was on the way. So when you grow that many, when you grow that fast, there's a whole lot of leaders who come in who probably didn't have a role beyond an individual contributor before. And so we did a ton of training and development for those folks so that they could handle direct reports, so that we had great systems and retention and blah 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 blah. Well, I thought I was just going to pivot and help organizations with leadership development because I focused on that. We saw what it meant for our organization, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And when I went and asked people for opportunities to do that for them, they all looked at me with cross eyes and said, I don't think we need that right now.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, and then I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to go buy an apartment building because I thought that that's the way that I would get passive income and had this dream from sophomore year in college. I was like, yeah, I'm going to do that. And I went to the first bank and they said, yeah, no. I said, why not? He said, well, you don't have any experience. I said, what do you mean? I just ran a $20 million business. I got this engineering license. I got an MBA. He's like, what else you got? And I said, well, a Six Sigma Master Black Belt, project
What do I
management
need?
professional. What do you want? They
A
said,
stamp collection. Come on. What do I need?
I got all the letters. What do you want? They said, well, we'd like to know that you bought a deal of similar size and executed the business plan that you're talking about executing right now. And I said, yeah, I got none of that. And they said, well, why don't you go find a partner that has that? And I said, but I'm the son of a soldier and a stay-at-home mom. Like, those people weren't coming to the cookout. I don't know what you're saying to me. And so I was like, oh, you guys are just crazy. So I went to the next one. And I did that 9 more times and nobody gave me a loan. And so I was like, okay, so now what do I do? And so I started fixing and flipping houses. That worked out. And then eventually I got back into the apartments. And then what I realized with the apartments was I don't have anybody to talk to. Like all of the people that I would normally talk to are at work. So what do I do now? And then I thought about the impact, right? And I thought about that flight and I thought about the ability to impact the lives of other people. And I realized like I was doing what a lot of people wanted to do. I was actually outside of the matrix. I was outside of the confines of the construct. And it was intriguing for a lot of people. Was I making the money I was making back then? No, I wasn't. Was I comfortable? I was okay, but it was frantic from the standpoint of, you see the duck kind of sitting on top of the water, but those legs are going. That's what I was doing. And when I really peel back the layer, I still didn't have the fulfillment. Nobody actually wants an apartment building. They just want the cash flow from the apartment building.
Right.
Nobody wants whatever the widget is. They don't want that. They want the proceeds from it. And I wanted impact. I wanted significance. And while we do buy communities and make them better, what we don't do, or what I wasn't doing, was positively impacting the lives of other people. I wasn't helping them accomplish their dreams. I wasn't guiding them through the things that were going to show up for them in their life and making sure they didn't get blindsided or suggesting to them what they needed to watch out for, making a strategic introduction so they can get the relationship they need in order to make the thing happen. And if I think back to the childhood, I wasn't helping anybody get their airplane. And I was empty.
Yeah.
And so I went back and I said, well, how can I do that? Right. And so I still remember when I made the hard pivot in the middle of COVID, January of 2022. I did 4 coaching calls with a client that I'd been working with for a number of years, and it was just he and I doing this thing. And he has some real success over the past 5 years that we've been working together. And people were starting to ask questions because he was so consistent with the performance, and he was in a space where everybody could see revenue numbers and so on. Because the majority of folks I serve are in financial services. And then I made a hard pivot midway through the year. And then when I go back to 2021, I did about 750 coaching calls in 2021. And I wouldn't trade it for the world, right? Because the ability to help people double revenue in their business, or double the transaction volume or assets under management, or help them quit their job like somebody did yesterday. I I buying a building, running a $20 million business where we're taking overhead power lines and putting them underground, nothing compares. Nothing, nothing that I've done thus far compares.
So what kind of how do people find you, Jerome?
Yeah,
What's
I mean, yeah, it's funny. We decided to tear down my website and start over, and so I got a mock up yesterday, but there's still one up. It's jeromemyers.co. And you can find everything there. We've got a ton of free resources. The checklist for exiting the matrix is there. We've got stuff on multifamily investing. Eventually, it will talk about some of the stuff that we do from a coaching perspective, because right now you can't find that, right? It's not something that I've marketed. It's just been referral based, or somebody that I've interacted with in some of the masterminds or social media groups that I'm involved in. And that's intentional because I'm one of the few coaches where you can actually talk to me outside of our scheduled time. I embed myself in their life, and it's my goal to be in the top 2 people that they call if something goes wrong, and in the top 3 when something amazing happened and they just have to tell somebody. And if I do that, then I've been successful in my mission as a advisor or a strategist for them.
awesome? So who's like your ideal client? Who do you feel like you help the best? Like who do you really love
Yeah.
working with?
So I love the people who figured out how to make money, and they're trying to figure out how to go from self actualization to transcendence. Right? You're not trying to figure out how you're going to pay your bills this month. Like I can help that person, but it's not the person I can help the most.
Yeah.
Person I can help the most is the one who realized they climbed the wrong ladder, and that they need to actually move into a space where they are working extremely hard or using the majority of their time to positively impact the lives of other people.
So you're actually helping people to figure out what it is that's going to really light them up.
Chris, you took the words out of my mouth. So the game here is all of us are here for a reason. We all have a specific mission that we are to accomplish. And many of us go through this part of our experience without actually doing that. And what I don't think people realize is how selfish that is. The person who doesn't complete their mission prevents somebody else from completing their mission. And that domino effect could be the reason why we haven't cured cancer, or some ended world hunger, or you pick the thing. But you deciding that, oh yeah, it's not that important, I'm just going to do something that's practical, is literally transforming the world in a way that we probably don't want it to change. You're delaying the evolution of what's supposed to happen here.
Wow. So how do you help people explore that part of themselves?
Yeah, so our base level experience is called the Line to Zion, and it's a 2 call, 2 hour experience each time. And in the first part of that experience, I interview the person, and we get a comprehensive data set on what has happened in the world. And on the backside of it, we are able to tell them what they are uniquely positioned for. We identify all the roadblocks that are keeping them from making that transition. And we help them come up with a strategy so that they can go out and execute the thing. And it's different for everybody. The plan, the experience is customized. But at the end of the day, I I'm not looking for massive scale. I'm looking for the ability to transform the people who are going to touch tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands and even millions of people. I don't need to touch the millions if I can touch one person who can go do that. And so when you're really walking and working in purpose, it always makes room for you. And it makes room for you in ways that you can't see when you're doing lower order tasks or behaviors. And so that is how we do it. And we give them that plan and they get a number of different options. They can do nothing, but it's really hard to do nothing when you have it laid out in front of you and
Yeah.
you know in your heart of hearts that this is what you're supposed to do. And you just got all this clutter that you keep around to keep you from doing it. You can work with me on it because if we get to the end of the road and I'm the right person to help you go on that journey, then I want to go with you. Or you can go work with somebody else. At the end of the day, as long as you do it, I'm thrilled, right? This isn't trying to box you in to work with me, but what is super important is that you work with somebody. And so we go through that process. And when people embark on the journey, I call it going into the desert. So a lot of us sit in the jungle, right? There's plenty of water, there's shade. It's convenient. You got to watch out for the anacondas, but outside of that, it's a pretty safe place to be. And so what happens is people will walk out into the desert and like, "Oh, it's hot." And everything starts to look the same once you get away from the jungle and you can get turned around, you can get lost. But you need to get to that oasis so that you know, hey, I'm on the right path and there's going to be provision for me while I'm out here trying to figure out how to get to the paradise. And so if you have a guide who's been on the journey with before, they can help make sure that you get to the oasis and maybe you get tired or you decide, hey, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. You can plug into them and get recharged so that you can keep going, keep going. And then eventually, if you continue to follow that North Star, you get to Zion, you get to your paradise. And when you get there, you live this life that you can't imagine ever going back to the old thing. Every time somebody leaves corporate America behind and they actually experience the freedom that comes with not having to go ask for time off or some of the other things that you would think you wouldn't do after you're in elementary school, but for some reason as adults you end up doing it. Uh, they
It's
realize
recess
that they
all the
can never
time.
go back. Yeah. Well, it can be if you're doing the right thing, right? And I say the right thing. If you're doing the thing that you're placed on this earth to do, it is play. Work should feel like play. It should be fun.
Yeah. You're doing it and it's work by definition because you're getting paid for it, but it doesn't feel like work. It feels like just what do I feel? What am I excited about today? What I want to dig my teeth into and attack today and get some fun results and meet some interesting people and definitely. So Jerome, somebody who's like in that place and they're like, I know this is not what I was born to do. I know this is not my, is there anything that they could like an action they could take today that would at least get them to sort of be wandering into the right direction, at least get them to stand up and start thinking about walking out of the jungle?
Yeah, yeah. I think the first thing that you have to do is suspend disbelief. It's the first thing you do is suspend disbelief. If anything could be done, if you could do anything, what would that be? No parameters. You don't have to figure out how you're going to pay for it. You don't have to figure out what you're going to do with the kids. You don't have to figure out what's going to happen with your car or your big house or any of that stuff. Listen, I was a guy who had a 6,000 square foot house, an exotic car, and I went to zero in income. Zero, right? So I'm not telling anybody to do that, but once you get to the place where you know that you got to do something else, when you know that you're trapped, enough is enough. What are we going to do? Right? So suspend disbelief and dare to dream. And once you get there, you'll probably have a really good idea of what you're supposed to do. And then it's just a matter of doing the math in order to be able to figure out how you get from where you are to where you want to go.
Yeah. Nice. Awesome. Hey, John, what should I have asked you that I didn't ask you? Like, what have you been dying to like share that I haven't like touched on?
You've done such a good job. I mean, the only thing that I would love to say again, because I said it earlier, is my thesis on life. And it's that your dreams should be real. And I didn't go down this path earlier, but I will now. Look, that dream was placed in you for a reason. And even if you decide to repress it, suppress it, it's still there. It's not going to go away. And so you can do one or two things. You can let it grow or you can try to kill it. But by killing it, if you're motivated by other people, just know that you're letting so many other people down because you didn't allow them to do because you didn't do the thing that needed to happen in order for them to be able to do their thing. So understand that you're holding, it could be millions of people back because you're not doing what you're placed here to do.
Jerome, do you think that everybody has just like one dream in there? Or I feel like I have like 50 dreams.
Well, everybody has at least one, right? And I think for the dreamers, right? And visionaries is another word that I like to use for those folks. They have multiples, but there's one that sets up all the other stuff. Everything that's happened in your life has happened for you. It's happened to get you to a position and a place where you can actually fulfill the requirements necessary in order to bring this thing into existence. Right? It's no different than a woman growing a baby and then going through the labor of pushing it out. It took all of this time. It took 9 months to get to the day that it's going to be so intense so that you can bring the baby into the world. And then for most people, that child is relying on you for the next 18 years so that they can get to a place where they can walk on their own. And I mean, for a lot of kids, it's probably not even 18 years, it's probably 26 at this point because they're staying on healthcare and everything else. But the
35,
point
whatever.
is, you keep doing more and more, and every day the baby gets more and more independent in the ideal world. And then it's walking, and then it's taking its own bath, and it's doing all the things to be independent. And that's your dream. And then once you got one going, then you can bring the other one in. But what I think happens, Chris, is people who have a lot of dreams, they try to do all of them at once, and none of them ever gain any real traction. And so what I force people to do is get really, really clear about what the one thing is so that you can push that domino and then the other ones will be taken care of either with the first domino or in conjunction with the other things that happen as a result of it. Because my vision of helping somebody could lead to somebody else starting a coaching practice and helping a totally different segment of the community, but
Mhm.
using very similar principles. And I had no idea that that was going to happen as a result of what we did, but it does, and it can, and it probably will.
Cool. So, Joan, people who know they need you, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, they can come to jeromemyers.co. The contact form is still up, and we can figure out what makes sense for you. I mean, I think that is I can't help everybody, right? And everybody doesn't have a problem that I get excited about. I am fortunate enough to be in a position that if you've got a challenge that I'm passionate about, and I know how to nip that thing in the bud so that we can eliminate the pain and then move you to the next level. If I can do that, I'm going to be ecstatic to work with you on that. But if I can't, I'm going to refer you to somebody who can. Because again, my vision, my dream, my desire, my purpose is to help people get to the place where they can actually have labor and bring that thing into the world. I get the proof that dreams can be real every time somebody manifests one. And
Yeah.
for me, that keeps me going.
Awesome. Awesome. Do you have like a favorite book or podcast or something where you kind of get inspiration for yourself?
It's going to sound so bad, Chris, but I listen to my own podcast. I have a podcast called DreamCatchers, and while I do the interviews and then I don't do anything else, and then when it comes out, like I listen to the episode because as a host, like you don't really get the full
Full
exchange while
impact.
you're doing this,
Yeah.
right? And then but on the other side of it, when you hear the interview, it's amazing for me because I don't even know what question I'm going to ask next when I'm listening to the playback because sometimes it's a few months after we did the podcast.
Yeah.
So for me, I tune in there and those folks give you the most amazing tips, tricks, and tactics. So I feel bad for saying that, but I just love the way that people come in and tell the stories on how they exited the Matrix and how they kind of take the armor off and don't pretend to be super successful for their entire life, which is, I think, why you asked one of those opening questions, because I think there is a transition. I do think there is a journey for those folks who are super successful. They always had some stumblings and bumblings along the way.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, otherwise it's not interesting, right? Who's going to want to talk to you? Like, yes, I was always successful. I was always rich. I just, kind of just kept walking like, okay, yeah, yawn. That was a 2-minute podcast. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I refuse to let people just pretend like they're self-made and they did everything by themselves and they never made any mistakes. That's just it's not realistic. It's not being honest, and it signals that they just have a big ego because they feel like everybody's got to know that they're perfect, and nobody's
Yeah.
perfect.
Better to be real.
I like that.
Awesome. Anything in parting that you want to share?
I'm just so grateful for the opportunity to share with you. This is an amazing conversation for me.
Well,
You did such an amazing job interviewing and asking questions that
oh, thanks,
I'm just
Jerome.
grateful for the
Well, you did a
experience.
great job answering them. I'm only as good as my guest.
Well, I don't know. But seriously, I don't think a whole lot of people have the interest or the tenacity to actually ask the tough questions. They just kind of let people go wherever, and you really do guide the conversation, which is why your podcast is so big.
Thank you. Well, thanks, Jerome, so much for sharing with us today. And thank you, listener, for tuning in. I know you have a choice of what is it, about 2 million podcasts. So I'm really grateful that you're here listening to Jerome and I today because we had a good time talking to you. Please share this episode, subscribe, do all the stuff that podcast hosts love for you to do. And in the meantime, have a fantastic week and we'll see you next week.